All right, this just in on HQ. The college football world is still reeling from Sunday when Penn State fired their head coach, James Franklin. So they're hitting a reset button in Happy Valley when the Nittany Lions suddenly, they're now on a 3-game losing streak. Certainly not what we thought coming into this season. Athletic director Pat Kraft talked to reporters earlier this afternoon about what happened. So here's some of what he had to say.
When you've made the decision, you have to make the decision with a whole heart and with conviction. And so, you know, I was going to sleep on it on Sunday, and but I knew it was the right course of action for us as a program, and more importantly for the team. This is not a 3-game thing. This is really diving into where we were as a program. What is the trajectory of this program? And you all know, and I'm not shy to admit it, I'm here to win national championship. And I believe our fans deserve that. And I wake up every day trying to achieve that goal.
All right, let's welcome in our college football analyst, Brandon Marcello. So, Brandon, I know this whole topic of James Franklin being fired from Penn State has been talked about ad nauseum, right? But we're hearing from Pat Kraft there, and he said, hey, this is not just a 3-game thing as they're on this 3-game losing streak. So what goes through your mind when you're hearing that? Because this is a program that was just in the CFP, had a pretty deep CFP run last season. So if it's not just a 3-game thing, then why move on from a coach that brought you success not that long ago?
Yeah, it's a 3-game thing that reinforces the fears they had before the playoff last year, because the storyline there was he can't win the big game. Then he finally gets into the playoff for the first time, makes some noise. They're only a play or two away from reaching the national championship game. But then you start the season off and you're not playing anybody worth a darn. And then you finally get Oregon at home and your offense can't do anything and you end up losing in overtime. Those fears return. And then you lose UCLA and it's like, okay, have you lost the team? Then you come back home to Northwestern and you lose. And it's like, okay, this is it. What he did last year is as good as it's ever going to get. We know now. Rip the Band-Aid off. There are no more second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth chances. They've been questioning themselves over this for the better part of the last 3 to 4 years. So this 3-game losing streak, yes, they say it's not about that. In a way, it's not because of what's happened in the past. But this made it so much easier to make this decision instead of just waiting till the end of the year and having a very hard conversation about what to do.
Yeah, we just saw the graphic lay out the details there of the downfall of the program and you know what led up to the firing, that 3-game losing streak. They're sitting at 3-3. So, Brandon, what do you think is next for this Nittany Lions program here? This is a squad that in the preseason, a lot of folks were saying, hey, this can be a national title contender, but for this season, as also they don't have Drew Aller for the rest of the season as well. So when you're looking at the schedule, how do you think it's all going to end up when it's said and done?
Yeah, I don't know if we were sitting here in the preseason thinking, Indiana is the toughest game on Penn State's schedule, but it is, and that's not coming up until there in early November. I actually think that this schedule is relatively they could navigate it and be okay, but goodness gracious, Ohio State and Indiana in back-to-back weeks, arguably, I think, the top 2 teams in the country potentially right now, and will be at that point. Listen, this season is a wash for them, and I think that Pat Kraft, the athletic director, did a great job of telling the fans at his press conference, listen, just rally around the players because they need it right now. Go cheer for them, go to the games and cheer for them right now. I think in a lot of ways they're not sitting there thinking, hey, we could still win out and get to a really great bowl game. I think the fans just need to kind of watch their players grow, send them off, with a good farewell, because a lot of these players are going to go to the NFL. Remember, they convinced so many of these players to return this season in an all-in approach with their NIL money to go win a national championship. They are out of that conversation completely, even if they run the table. So go bid these kids farewell, enjoy everything, buy into the family atmosphere at Penn State. And then, their favorite pastime at Penn State is going to become this coaching search. They're going to be refreshing the message boards, going to 247sports.com and communicating with their fan base there, because this football season is an absolute wash.
Yeah, let's talk more about this new vacancy that's out there, because, of course, some big names already being thrown around. Another Big Ten coach in Matt Rhule, has been thrown around as a possible candidate here. That is his alma mater. And he was asked about this Penn State opening. Take a listen.
Yeah, well, I love Penn State. Met my wife there. It's my alma mater. fan since I was born. I was born, I think, probably had a Penn State shirt when I was born. I love Pat Kraft. And really sad to see Coach Franklin go. You know, when you think about what he did for my alma mater, you know, the program was in peril, right? I mean, the players, if people remember, like the historic sanctions, you could transfer out, you could do whatever you want. Bill O'Brien comes in, stabilizes it for 2 years. James takes over a program in disarray and gives stability, excellence, and to see videos of people like yelling at his kids, and like I just don't understand why in our country, like, well, now, like, coaches are villains. Like, do you know how hard I worked in Carolina and the things that were said to me, or you know how hard I work here and some of the things that are said, our coaches work here, how hard Sat worked last year. So I'm just really sad about that part of it. And people say, well, you make a lot of money. Making a lot of money doesn't make your kids feel good when they're hearing that. Make a lot of money. It's nice to make a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but still people. So I really respect James Franklin. Troy and I are in unbelievable relationship too. And Troy and I are in constant communication about this program and where we're headed. I came here for 2 reasons. I love the community here and wanted to live here, and I love it here. And I wanted to rebuild Nebraska football. And Troy and I understand the steps that you need to take to make us Big Ten champions and national champions. This place is elite, and I want to be a great father, and I want to be a great college football coach. And so, I'm not going to talk a lot about job openings when they come. Maybe it's been a while here, but this is what happens when you win. I've dealt with it. We've won at Temple, and I dealt with it all the time. I dealt with Baylor. I'm not going to talk about those things ever. I'm not going to talk about my contract here. I'm going to talk about the team. But yeah, I absolutely love it here, and I want us to continue to take the steps needed for us to turn this thing into a beast. And players all across the country want to come here. We have the best facilities. We have elite fans, and I'm just looking at the future. So, but again, I love that place. I love Pat. I love James Franklin. Sad that came to an end. I wish him the absolute best, but I'm really happy here and excited to get going this week on Minnesota.
What further steps?
All right, so we know that Matt Rhule loves Penn State. He loves his alma mater, but he also says, hey, I love it here being Lincoln, Nebraska. So, Brandon, how realistic really is it, after you heard that as well, that Matt Rhule is going to be a candidate or somebody that can step in the shoes there over at Penn State?
Well, I like hamburgers and I like steak, but steak is better than hamburgers, and that's what Penn State is right now. They're the steak. They're the prime rib out there. And that's, he's got the connections there. He's a Pennsylvania guy. He's a Penn State guy. I mean, the interim coach at Penn State, Terry Smith, right now, he got into college football as a coach because of Matt Rhule. Matt Rhule hired him at Temple. He's got a lot of great connections to Penn State in their past, the understanding of it right there. And that wasn't a denial at all if he would be interested in it. He didn't say at all, hey, I'm not going to take that job or anything like that. I'm just not going to talk about jobs right now. He will be near the top of the list, if not number one, for Penn State when they start making phone calls near the end of the season to their primary candidates. Make no mistake about that. Let's also consider this. Matt Rhule's buyout, if he chooses to leave Nebraska, is only $5 million, which is a lot of money for 99% of the country, but for an athletics department, it's just a drop in the bucket. Also, let's consider other candidates out there, including Indiana's Curt Cignetti. His buyout is $13 million if he were to leave there. And I can tell you, people around Indiana are a little bit concerned. Will Curt Cignetti potentially leave for us? But what's interesting about these two top names that are probably near the top of the list for the people I've talked to in the industry is that they're program rebuilders. Curt Cignetti has done that everywhere he's been. Matt Rhule, that's been his MO. He's taken over programs that are absolutely in the cellar and has lifted them back up to respectability. Maybe doesn't win championships, but gets them back to respectability. My question is for Matt Rhule is how does he deal with the program where he'll go into it potentially next year and they're going to be built for success immediately? And what happens if he only wins 9 games? I think that's a big concern, something he's got to worry about. The idea of you can't go home again, there's potential there. Would you leave a blue blood type program like Nebraska where they have a lot of resources and they're getting it rolling and you could potentially break through there and be considered a legend, but maybe instead go to Penn State to try and rescue them, but you're in a position there where you should win big immediately, but if you don't do that, all of a sudden you're a pariah? I mean, I thought it was very clear there, him mentioning James Franklin's kids getting yelled at. And then he mentioned it later again in his comments. I think that's something that'll weigh on his mind. More coaches these days are speaking up about the criticism that fans are hurling toward not them, but to their families. Remember last year with Ryan Day at Ohio State? They hired 24/7 security to maintain security around their house because their kids were hearing it at school and they were getting all kinds of threats. The kids were staying at home. Matt Rhule going to Penn State, they see him as one of their own, but what happens the moment things go south there? What happens the moment you only win 9 games, which would go over very well at Nebraska in most programs, but at Penn State, it's national championship or bust, and Penn State's been bust in their eyes for the better part of those last 5 to 6 years. Very difficult decision to make there if Matt Rhule gets that phone call. And at the very least, Penn State's going to kick those tires and see if he's interested, because he would make a lot of sense for Penn State's side. For Matt Rhule's side, other than wanting to go back home again, I'm not sure that's something that maybe he would want to go try. But money talks, and when you see those Penn State colors and you get the nostalgia in you, maybe that changes Matt Rhule's mind.
But to your point, Brandon, I can only think of a couple of programs where only win 9 games is kind of like frowned upon. Bama, Penn State, to your point, certainly being one of them. Brandon, we appreciate it as we're continuing that conversation. James Franklin being fired from Penn State and what is next for the Nittany Lions. They're, of course, continuing this conversation over on College Football Insider, CBS Sports' College Football Podcast. You can watch right now by scanning that QR code on your screen, or you can download, follow, listen, all the things wherever you find your favorite pods.